right, it is 8:30. I'm just going to give it a few more moments here, and then I will get the ball rolling. I have questions turned on, so you can submit them as you come in, and we'll go from there. Hello, I see one person has just joined. I'm going to give it a few more moments just to see if anyone else comes in to watch it live, and then I'll get started. Just going to give it another minute and a half, and then I will get the ball rolling. Okay, I'm going to say that has been plenty of time, so I'm just going to go ahead and get started here. So there were two specific questions asked in the groups, and I'm going to answer them a little bit out of order. I'm going to go with the one that's shorter just to kind of get warmed up here. The first question that was asked is, what are some different ways to use powdered peanut butter? And I'm assuming that means like something like PB2. So I have some of that myself, and I found a couple different uses for it. First thing I've used it for is I just add it to protein shakes to give it a peanut butter flavor without adding too many calories. I've also just sprinkled it as a powder on top of protein fluff and things like that, just right on top. You can also add water to it to make like a peanut butter substitute and put that on toppings, things like fruit, Quest bars, basically anything you would use peanut butter for. It's essentially reconstituted peanut butter without fat in it. I've also mixed it with dairy products like cottage cheese and Greek yogurt to make kind of like a peanut butter cheesecake type tasting dessert. Other than that, those are the ones I've tried, but other than that, you can bake with it, make like cookies that would be lower in fat with the PB2 instead of peanut butter. I haven't tried that myself, but there is a huge recipe section on the PB2 website, which is bellplantation.com. If you end up making something with peanut butter 2 and using one of the recipes, you should post it in group and let everyone know if it's tasty or not. And maybe if your review is convincing enough, I'll give it a try myself. But as of right now, it's a little too warm for me to start baking. However, that should change soon. All right, so the second question is a great question, and it's longer and has a multi-part answer. So the question that was asked was, how long can we expect it to take before tracking, making better choices, and exercise become a habit and become easier? So I'm glad you asked this. So in order to answer this, I kind of had to reflect back over my own journey. So I went back to a log that I've kept since essentially day one. And it looks like that it took me at least a solid 5 or 6 weeks without any missteps before I would have considered it easier or a habit. So once I had those habits built, I've had more than my fair share of missteps and a couple, utter failures that I was able to recover from. But I was generally always able to return to those habits soon after there were any missteps, after they were initially cemented. So that was the tipping point where the habits were the normal behavior and the missteps were the anomaly. When you first get started, the new habits you're trying to form are new, and what you're trying to get away from is the normal. So you want to reverse that pattern. So I was able to make it that long without any missteps because I had a very strong positive feedback loop. Because I was so overweight at the time, I was well over 410 pounds. I immediately went for a larger calorie deficit. So in those first 6 weeks, I probably lost well over 20 pounds on the scale. Now, probably not much of that was fat loss. It was simply that, I was 400 pounds eating something like 1,800 calories and 200 grams of protein. Prior to that, when I was climbing above 410 pounds, I was probably taking in upwards of 5,000 calories. So even just the amount of food in my system would have caused a gigantic scale drop. Also, taking in less food means taking in less sodium, so that I wouldn't be holding as much water weight either. But once I saw that scale drop, it's a positive feedback loop. But I had to use willpower to stick to that calorie and protein range while I was creating that loop. And I think we've discussed before that willpower is a finite resource. You can't depend on it entirely. You have to build those habits using the limited amount of willpower that you do have, so that once that willpower runs out, you have something to fall back on. So once I had that feedback loop in place and I could say, hey, this works, I'm seeing progress, I didn't restrict my calories as much as I did when I was establishing it. Like I said, I think at one point the first week I was like 1,500 calories, which was probably a 2,500 to 3,000 calorie drop from what I was used to eating. So as you can imagine, I probably wasn't very pleasant to be around, and that was probably the first time I'd been really hangry. If you don't know what hangry means, it's a combination of hungry and angry. I'm sure you've all been there though. So what this point right here is the hardest and biggest challenge for me as your coach, because I want to create a positive feedback loop for all of you to help you cement those habits in place without any missteps until they're the new normal. But the problem with that is that if you restrict calories too low and you have to hit such a high protein goal, you really run the risk of causing binges where, okay, one day you'll get really low, but then you'll start missing things with such a low calorie range you can't really fit them in. So that would maybe prompt you to binge on something that you were really missing that couldn't fit in with such a low calorie goal and still meet your protein goal. So that's a difficult decision for me to make. So I mean, it's possible to make the scale drop very quickly if you know how to do so. So the more you drop the calories, the higher the protein needs to go, even above what all of you were targeting right now. So I mean, you basically would only be eating lean protein sources and green vegetables and nothing else, but you will see a large scale drop. As far as what I've asked all of you to do, it's not that. I don't feel that this is a good long-term strategy or a habit you'd want long-term, so I've opted to go the slower route with everyone, a not as aggressive calorie deficit, but that creates the risk that you're not going to get a feedback loop started as soon as possible. However, like I said, I feel for long-term success, a slow start will allow you to cement those habits, maybe a little slower, maybe slightly a little bit more painful, but it would also work to help eliminate some bad habits of cycling between I'm restricting myself too much to I can't do this anymore, I'm just going to binge on, for me it would be like kid cereal. I'm going to go eat a bunch of Fruit Loops. So that's kind of what I wanted to avoid, but I understand that there's a risk that if you're not getting that positive feedback loop immediately and things seem slower, you may feel like it's not working, but you kind of just at some point have to trust the process. So there's a concept that is related to this about forming habits, and it's called don't break the chain. And I'm going to paraphrase what it's about. And it's a productivity tip that comes from Jerry Seinfeld, the comedian, from Seinfeld. And he applied this productivity tip to writing for comedy. So he set a goal, and that goal was that he was going to write something, comedy-wise, every single day. So Seinfeld would buy a large year-at-a-glance calendar. Every day that he wrote new material, he would have the exquisite pleasure that can only come from drawing a big red X over that day. So as he started to write multiple days in a row, he would draw a red X over that day, and that drawing the X in and of itself became fun and rewarding, so he kept doing it. Eventually, he began to create a giant chain of X's back to back. So then his goal became to never break that chain. Obviously, life happens. That may not always be possible, but in creating those chains, that helps you to reinforce those habits. So this approach is to program the body and mind to focus on a goal, both together in concert, but also gives motivation to continue that big string of red X's. So if you don't meet your goal, you don't get to draw the X. How we would apply that would be, set it to be something that is not some goal that's so far away that that is just simply not possible to maintain every single day when life gets in the way. Because as we examined, looking at social obligations we have coming up, most people have more social obligations than days that they don't have social obligations. There's always something coming up, be it at work where someone brings in donuts or cookies, that type of thing. Those things happen so often that that's the normal. And the days where you can just stick to your plan 100%, that's the oddball. So I think if you wanted to do this, it's not necessary to do it for a long period of time. It's been said that habits can take upwards of 30 days to form. So maybe if you wanted to try that for a month for a short-term goal of I'm going to at least track every single day. You don't need to, some of the things mentioned were tracking, exercising, meeting a protein goal. Trying to do all three of those at once every single day on point with no missteps, I think is setting yourself up for failure. If you tackle them one at a time, they'll seem much more manageable. I believe the easiest way to deal with a big problem is to break it up into the smallest chunks you can that are manageable for you, and then tackle them one by one, and that gives you momentum as well. So I think that is worth trying in order to achieve some better short-term adherence and to help you kind of build your own positive feedback loop that's not necessarily tied to the scale, unless you want to go that route of a bigger calorie deficit, which I am going to advise against, but if that's something that interests you, it's certainly something we can discuss. That covers the two questions I was asked, and if anyone has any questions, can you please try and submit them? If not, I'll give you a minute to submit them. And like I always say, I know that as soon as the Hangout ends, you immediately think of a question. That's fine. You can go ahead and ask it in group. I'll do my best to judge whether or not it can wait a week or if me giving you a more immediate answer would be more helpful to you. So, okay. I see a question. Let's take a look. So the question is, did you ever resist losing weight because of the emotional changes that it brings and being afraid that you couldn't do it anymore because it was so hard, or that I would get daunted by the challenges? I want to say that for the first 100 pounds, no. I kind of had set for myself that I was racing against the clock for when my daughter was being born. That was my primary motivator. So even in times when I was emotional that I'm not going to do this anymore, there was a ticking clock about, hey, she's going to be born in so many months. I need to keep going. It did become very challenging after that fact because I kind of hinged all my focus and drive on that one event. And after the fact, it was very difficult, even just time-wise, to manage, fitting in, working out, going to work. That was all new to our family, and it was very difficult at that point. I've had periods where I knew that I wasn't done with weight to lose, and I just took a break. Basically at this point this is like year 6 for me. I've taken periods of breaks where, I didn't regain weight, but I didn't lose any, and I still had more to lose, of up to a break for a period of like up to a year. Simply because, like you said, the emotional changes, and I kept questioning, why am I doing this? I lift weights, but I don't have any desire to do that competitively. Bodybuilding doesn't interest me whatsoever. So why? I'm married. It's not like I'm trying to be attractive for the dating pool. Those weren't concerns to me. So I kept questioning that, and even now, that's kind of where I feel like that's happened to me more than once, and I've kind of had to reevaluate where I'm eventually going. So as you noticed, some of the ways that I've mentioned things, that I'm doing all of this, everything you guys are doing, I'm doing it now too. That's why like MyFitnessPal diary is open, so you can kind of see like I'm tracking every day. I have a calorie goal. I get hungry, I get hangry. I have a protein goal. I have a coach myself, and I'm still going through that. And there are some days where I really question, do I really need to keep going? I'm not morbidly obese anymore. What's the point of this? So it's really about coming up with your own reasons and motivation from there. I will say my favorite part about having a coach is the days where I really don't want to do this, even despite the 6 years of habits behind me that are propelling me forward. There are just days where this is a grind, and I just want to eat ice cream for every meal. That it's very helpful to have a coach, because then I can just be mad at him, and I've found that that's gotten me through some pretty tough days. And so feel free, you can do that to me. I won't hold it against you, and it's fine. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so if anyone has any additional questions, I just want to comment real quick on 2 discussions that kind of happened in the group that I feel would be good to discuss. First one was about, I mentioned in your guides that you can have as many green, cruciferous, non-starchy vegetables as you like, and you don't have to track them. So someone was asking, is there like a limit to that? I understand that calories matter, so why don't we track them? Calorie counting and macros are not an exact science. There is some individual variability for foods, so those calorie amounts are like averages, and they're not 100% exact. So when we do that, we make the assumption that if you're going to eat vegetables, you're going to eat them often, and the green ones are so low in calories, they contribute so much to you feeling full, they contribute so many vitamins and minerals towards your well-being, that it's not worthwhile counting them, unless you're doing something a little bit odd, like eating pounds and pounds and pounds and pounds of them, that would significantly impact your calorie goals. So some examples of things when I say don't count your vegetables, you have to count. Well, you don't have to, but you should count because they add up pretty quickly and they're starchy, like peas and carrots. Those are starchy vegetables. Peas are legumes, so same thing. Corn is actually a grain and not a vegetable, so that all those types of vegetables would need to be counted. Personally, like if I have a salad, I'll put like green peppers on it, cucumbers, and if I just wanted to have like a snack with cucumbers, red. I know I said red, or I'm sorry, I know I said green, but like red peppers, yellow peppers cut up. I wouldn't count those or weigh those. I'd just chop them up and eat them. Things like that. Onions. Most people would probably count them. I don't really bother too much. I don't really stress about it. And most of the time, when you have a larger amount to go as far as the amount of weight to lose, you don't need to be that strict on things that are vegetables, I wouldn't say. So the key point is that if you're getting even like 100 or 200 calories a day from vegetables that you're not counting, your calorie deficits that's your goal for a day would be adjusted based on your progress. So even if we adjust them down, you wouldn't change the amount of vegetables you're getting because it's expected that your hunger would slightly increase. So the amount of vegetables you eat would be pretty constant. The other one that I wanted to mention was some people it's been recommended that you try intermittent fasting. Someone in group without any problems, but they still preferred eating breakfast, and that's fine. Intermittent fasting is one of those things that's simply another tool that can allow you to have more room for things you want to enjoy or later in the day. I intermittent fasted for 2 years without breakfast, except maybe like on weekends now and again to have breakfast with my family, because I always preferred eating later in the day, a bigger dinner, and then like a bigger snack before bed, just because I sleep better that way. I'm not currently doing intermittent fasting regularly, as you can see on my MyFitnessPal diary, but on occasions, like we talked about, for social obligations or anything like that, where you know you're going to have higher calories in a meal and there's really nothing you can do about it and you don't want to stress about it, it's helpful to basically skip breakfast, have an all-protein lunch, and then you could fit those things in. So you can do it all the time if it suits you. If it doesn't suit you, if you try it for like a week or something, then you'll be much more easily able to integrate it on occasions when you do want to do it. Just as another example, it's my grandfather's birthday this weekend, so we'll probably be going out to dinner. I'll likely either fast all day up to the dinner, or right before dinner I'll have like a protein shake or a bunch of chicken and like I mentioned, like cucumbers and a salad and green peppers, and I'll cover them in sriracha and red hot pepper flakes. So then right before dinner I'll have eaten lots of protein. I'll probably still hit my protein and calorie goals, and I'll be able to still enjoy dinner. I mean, and you can still figure out your dinners if you're going out to dinner without having to do that. I just find it's much more convenient, and it's in the end it's less stress on me to be able to fit things in, because I do enjoy larger meals in the evening, like I said. So that pretty much covers everything I wanted to talk about. I'll give it another minute and see if anyone else has any questions to submit. And like I said, if you come up with a question after the Hangout ends, please feel free to ask in group, and I'll see if it needs to be addressed right away or if we can table it for next week's Hangout. All right. Well, thank you for everyone for watching if you watched it live, and if you're watching it after the fact, thank you also. Please let me know if you have any feedback anything you'd like to see done differently, any suggestions, things I should include, things I should not do, please let me know. Thank you, and I'll be talking to you soon. Bye.